Hey guys, it's Linux Next here, and in today's video, I wanted to go over what the hell is Microsoft doing with Windows and kind of the path they're going down when it comes to building and just improving a desktop operating system that a lot of people use, and just what they're doing exactly right now, today. Even as today, a certain update has came out which has introduced some features that people don't really seem to like. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Windows 11 has a new feature that they're adding to Windows 11 that is adding advertisements to your start menu for some reason. Don't know why. It's just something that I guess Microsoft wants to do because they want to make more money out of you as a user, and they want to advertise applications that you think that you may like. And I just wanted to go over that, like, this is really dumb, honestly, that they are doing this, and they don't really seem to respect Windows users at all, I would say. I moved away from Windows around 2 years ago, and I've been using Linux as my main desktop experience, and I've been able to play my games, use my software, all of that without any real big issues. Now, of course, this isn't Windows' first time of trying to do this. If you have used Windows in the past, with Windows 8 and 8.1, they did introduce a lot more advertisements with like the Bing search, which I think I show up here, or was it here? All the way back in 2013, brings the Bing ads, which still exists. When you try to search for something in the start menu, it'll usually bring up Bing search results instead of, looking up like a specific app you want to open or a specific file directory you want to go to. Instead, it just goes through Bing sometimes, which is really odd. I don't know why they like combine it. It's really weird, but as you can see, Windows has been doing this for quite a long time now when it comes to bringing advertisements to Windows, because they want to, well, advertise applications to the desktop for you, which some people like, and that's perfectly fine. But there's a lot of people who don't want this to appear at all. And of course, you can disable it with this new ads that have been tested in Windows 11, and with the certain update that's coming out today to actually enable it with a certain optional update in the system updater settings application. You can disable it, but it's just one of these things. It's like, why enable this if people are going to disable it anyway? I don't get it. It really is stupid. Windows is doing this. And they've been trying to do this for a very long time now, and this even goes past when when Windows tried to do these type of advertisements. It's the same with like Microsoft Edge. They're always trying to promote their browser. When you try to install a different browser, it'll be like, oh, use Microsoft Edge because it's so great and it has this and it has that. But then people go and install Firefox or Google Chrome anyways, because that's the best, that's a better browser. Even though Edge is built off of Chromium, it has a bunch of Microsoft stuff in it, which a lot of people don't like. They'd rather use Google Chrome or Firefox or some other, like Brave or something like that. Or Florp, for example. That's another great browser, like very privacy friendly. But it's just one of those things where Microsoft is constantly trying to advertise things to you on your operating system for no goddamn reason. There's no point in doing that unless you're trying to make money out of your users. And this is something that I think Windows doesn't really care about you. A lot of people think, Windows is like Windows 7. It's not. It's not anymore. It is a advertisement for Windows to advertise you, their products, and other people's products in your face while you're trying to use your desktop. That's really dumb in my opinion. And the fact that they're doing this now with start menu advertisements to show applications that you might like, and they don't even say that it's an advertisement, it just shows, like it says here, 1Password, password manager, save password safely. It looks like it's an installed application, but it's not. It's an advertisement. So it really, I would like, if anyone is a Windows user, I know you can customize it, remove a bunch of bloat, whatever, but out of the out-of-box experience, you get something that is under the hood really old. Then on top of it, sure, it has a pretty alright UI, but it has a bunch of advertisements that will spam you all the damn time. And this is not even exaggerated. Every time I've installed Windows, the OneDrive is asking me, oh, do you want to sign into account and sync all these files? And it'll try and sync files for you also. And then you got all these tiles that show up, all these different types of advertisements that I just don't want to bloody see when I use my desktop. This is kind of turning into a rant video, but Linux doesn't do that. Does not treat you as a a product. And that's how I feel about Windows, and I feel, I guess, about other Windows users when they are using Windows. I don't feel like they are actually using their desktop. They don't actually own it. It's almost like you pay for a license and you still get advertisements. It's just a clear indication that you don't own your operating system. You are not a user for that operating system. You are a product for Microsoft. This is, just going at a bit of proportion, but seriously, if any Windows users are watching right now, you are a product of Microsoft. They are collecting data off of you. They are displaying ads all over your desktop for no goddamn reason. Sure, you can disable it, but the fact is that they're trying to enable this stuff behind your back for no goddamn reason. It just shows they don't give a crap about you. All they care about is making as much money as possible and not really improving anything necessarily under the hood. A lot of other things that happen on Windows, when it comes to drivers, when it comes to applications, is all done by those developers, not done by Microsoft. So Microsoft really isn't doing anything. All they're doing is shoving things like advertisements down your throat. Sure, they put a nice new paint of coat over Windows, but under the hood, it's garbage. And I'm not even joking by that. Now, my other thing I put down was like why you should consider Linux in 2024. And honestly, really, it's just a better desktop experience. I'm using KDE Plasma right now. I'm using Arch, so that's pretty much, I have to use like the terminal sometimes if I want to install an application. Now, I know some of you will comment down below saying like, oh, why would you use a terminal? Don't you just use a GUI? Well, I'm using Arch. It's a terminal-centric distro. The whole point is that you're supposed to use the terminal for installing packages, especially the main way. But when it comes to installing Flatpak packages, I do use the Discover Store, which is a GUI, and you can do updates and install different apps through here. But overall, the desktop experience on Linux is not driven by money or greed. It's driven by an open source community, people who don't get necessarily paid to do specific proprietary work, and they do it in their free time. Well, it's kind of turning into more of a business, but most of the time these developers are contributing to these desktop environments, improving it, introducing new features, and then mostly getting paid from outsourced companies like Valve, for example, to improve other problems that are happening on the desktop, like under KDE Plasma, because that uses it on the Steam Deck. If you didn't know, Steam Deck does use Linux, and it uses KDE Plasma as the desktop as well. But yeah, like when you are using Linux in 2024, you feel like you own it. You feel like you can do whatever you want with it, and it won't disturb you necessarily. If you do break it, that's on you. You have to try and figure that out. Usually there'll be documentation for things, how to fix problems necessarily, but the desktop is yours. It's not like with Windows where sure, you're using it, so you kind of own it, but even if you pay a license, you're still going to get bombarded by a bunch of different advertisements. And this brings me to my next point, is that there are even government agencies around the world, like recently, one of the German governments, if I can find the link here, the German government, or one of the German states, has decided to ditch Windows and move to Linux and use the LibreOffice suite instead of using the Microsoft Office suite that most people use, because it's too expensive to have roughly like 30,000 PCs and having to pay Microsoft a hefty amount of money to maintain those PCs running Windows, which is honestly really dumb that you have to pay that much. It was in at least a couple $100,000, I would think, to actually like pay to keep those computers running properly, which is insanely expensive. And not just long ago, around I would say 2 years ago, the Chinese government also decided to move to their own Linux distro. They decided to create their own Linux distro for all of their computers, which is probably one of the best options, I would say, if you want to like be good with like security and stuff like that, and just be like an independent type of distro that like, other entities can't muck around with. And it says here that the phase out started with within Chinese government services being ordered to replace 30% of Windows PCs by the end of 2020, a further 50% in 2021, and the final 20% by the end of this year. According to the Chinese Securities, as reported, it will mean that around 20 to 30 million PCs will end up being replaced with Linux, not Windows. Now, I can understand for like China moving to Linux because they're not really a fan of Microsoft necessarily because, well, it's American, so they probably want to use something of their own and be really like independent when it comes to their own country. So that makes sense. But it's also like they have to pay, you know, Microsoft so much money to maintain those PCs, and that's probably one of the biggest things with these governments is it's really expensive to maintain those PCs with Windows on it versus if you signed up with, let's say, OpenSUSE. I know they have a really good security team, something like Red Hat as well, to have professionals roll out and install operating systems on computers in a government agency. And not just that, if we go back to, let's say, the gaming market, the gaming handheld market is improving. We have devices like the Steam Deck that have sold millions of copies over the past 2 years roughly, and Proton, the compatibility layer that is used for playing Windows games on Linux through translation layers, works extremely well now. The majority of games that you play work on Linux, and the only ones that don't use either kernel level anti-cheats, which is something that I guess the game companies and Valve would have to figure out, or it's either the game studio specifically says no. So something like Rainbow Six Siege's studio or Destiny, Bungie's studio, not enabling Proton support. But besides that, the majority of games work. I play all of my games on Linux now. I don't touch Windows. I haven't touched Windows since last year in like June, I think. So roughly, I don't know, like 6 or 7 months now. I haven't touched Windows at all. And I don't have Windows installed in any of my house. I have no computers that run Windows anymore. It's either Mac OS or Linux or Android for that matter. So when it comes to the handheld market, we have things like the Steam Deck, which you can, if I see here, is a great handheld device to play your games on the go, or you can even like plug a dock in and then plug a monitor in. And then you have stuff like these little devices like the ORANGEPI Neo, which is with ORANGEPI and MANJARO. And so it's going to run MANJARO with like the Steam Deck UI over the top of kind of like Steam OS. And it has, you know, the great hardware, and it obviously looks really nice. And this is already being sold in China, which is, it is coming to the American market, I think this year sometime, or maybe next year. I doubt with next year, but I'm pretty sure it's this year they're going to bring it, and it's not going to be expensive. It's only going to be like $500 to get one, and you'll be able to play the majority of your games under a Linux operating system. And it's just one of these things, like I see a lot of people come into my YouTube channel and they, you know, type down some comments about why, you know, Linux is bad, and people say, oh, Linux is great, and then they list down these things about why it sucks and these things are not working. And honestly, it sounds like a you problem in my opinion. You know, one of the things is when you move to Linux, you need to learn. It's one of the new things. It's a whole new operating system, and people have these issues and they're like, oh, I'm just going to jump back to Windows because I don't want to deal with it. That's fine. If you don't want to deal with those issues, go back to Windows. Seriously, if you want to use Linux, you need to learn it, and you should honestly learn Linux before you just jump in. You know, of course, you could install, like what I did is I installed Linux on my laptop back in like 2018, I think it was, or 2019, and I mucked around with it. I learned it as much as I could, and then it got to the point where Apex Legends got supported on the Steam Deck, which means it got supported on Linux desktop as well. And so I switched to my on my main desktop. I installed a Linux distro. I think it was like Zorin OS or maybe Linux Mint, and I started mucking around with it, and I learned it within roughly 2 years. It took me to learn the majority of things that run under Linux, like a basic idea of how things work. Of course, I'm not an advanced user when it comes to using Linux. I am using Arch, but I don't know everything about Arch still, and sometimes Arch will break and I'll get confused, and that's where I'll go on a little learning trip of how to fix a specific problem. So if I was going to recommend a distro for people to install as, you know, a new user, what would I recommend? Well, there's a couple for gaming distributions like NOBARA, for example. That is a great distribution that you can easily download the ISO, flash it on a USB. It has a bunch of apps pre-installed. Pardon me. There's a bunch of apps pre-installed for you. that are more gaming specific, and the majority of like when you want to grab a package, for example, you can either go to like the Discover store, or there is a specific store that you can grab for system packages as well on NOBARA. But not just that, if you want something similar to the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck is an immutable file system, which means you can't change really anything with the root file system, and it updates in a very handy way where things won't break. It will update, they'll test things out before they actually release the updates, and basically what it does is it swaps out that root partition for a new one, which is the new update. So it's really cool how it updates, because it means you get a stable experience. You're able to play some of the latest games on any hardware, basically, either it be Nvidia, AMD, or even Intel for that matter. As you can see here, like, you showed off some games, like, yeah, you can play Helldivers 2, Sea of Thieves, Forza Horizon 5, Halo Infinite. That's true. All these games work amazing under Linux, especially under my RX 6700. They work awesome. But let's say maybe you want to be a bit more experienced, I would say. You would probably try something like Fedora or OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. These are some great distros when it comes to if you want to run a rolling based distro, and you may experience issues down the line with certain updates. Well, actually, no, Fedora isn't a rolling based distro. It does have feature releases, but it still does update quite frequently, that you may have an issue here and there that may appear. I know there's tons of people that may use Fedora and they'll be like, oh, I have no issues, and that's probably true. But for example, like on OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, it is a rolling based distro, so you're always going to be getting the latest packages when they arrive. And OpenSUSE does test packages, but if you are an experienced user, or not, maybe you are tech savvy enough, I would install something like OpenSUSE Tumbleweed or Fedora. Or even if you wanted something even more experienced, I guess, ENDEAVOUR can be a great distro for that. They actually had a recent release where they used Plasma 6 with Wayland NX11 option and a Qt6 ported Calamari, which is the installer for installing the distro on your computer. But if you are someone that, let's say, you don't want to have a gaming based distro, you don't want to have a, let's say, bleeding edge or rolling based distro, you just want something you can just install on your laptop and just watch media off of it, browse the web, and not really do anything that crazy, even though you can use Flatpak to like get more out of it, I would suggest that you use like Linux Mint or Zorin OS. That is a great distro that I have installed on my dad's 2013 Intel PC, and it runs amazing. Even though I don't have like things like hardware acceleration because the hardware is too old to support that stuff, it does run properly and the apps work properly. I can look at like the old files that are on there that my dad's taken when he was younger. We can have a look through all those. All that stuff works properly, and updates work quickly and efficiently. And Zorin OS updates their update cycle around 3 years every time. So when it comes to stability, you can install Zorin OS and just use it, and there's nothing really you have to worry about until roughly like 3 years later, where you can decide if you want to upgrade or not. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. It's not really going to bug you about it. You can just say it to go away, and it will go away. There's nothing really else much to it. And I guess the last distro would be, the tech literate person who understands mostly everything about computers when it comes to software and hardware, knows how to configure their operating system. I would recommend Arch Linux. This is just the top tier, S tier distro that you can do really whatever you want with it when you first install it. I have installed right now. I went through the Arch install way, which is a very simple way of installing Arch for you. You don't actually have to go through the man page anymore and manually install things. You can just use the Arch install, and that works fine. But this would probably be one of the end game distros that you would use when it comes to using the terminal, configuring things on your own, and getting the most out of your hardware, I guess you could say, even though you can get the hardware same experience out of other distros that I have recommended. So in the end, Windows is a very controversial operating system, I would say, and it has been for a very long time now. I've used Windows basically for over, I would say 10, 11 years now, and I don't miss it, honestly. I've dealt with so many issues with Windows in the past when it comes to either, let's say, getting a virus on my PC or malware, stuff like that. That happened plenty of times. Running Windows on a very old Celeron laptop just couldn't handle opening up simple applications. And then also with Windows bombarding you with ads and implementing features that no one really asked for and only Windows or Microsoft really asked for. So when it comes to, what the future holds for Windows, I would say not much. I think Windows is going to the cloud very soon. They're transitioning to where you could just like use a subscription-based service to run Windows off of one of their servers, and that would suit a lot of people. I already know so many people use to stream their games from Xbox servers, either through like those Xbox Ultimate subscription things where you can do Xbox Game Pass and play all your games with only paying like maybe like $10. And I feel like that could be the same experience that Microsoft is going down, is through that cloud service, and it seems like that is what they're doing. And so they're implementing things in Windows that honestly don't make sense. They ruin the experience for the user. They make it more annoying and just more inviting for other people to go and try out different operating systems. Either buying like a MacBook to use macOS, that's one option you could do if you have the money, you can't afford it. But if not, honestly, you really should check out Linux. It is a great operating system. It has a lot to offer. It has a lot of standards now when it comes to package managers, desktop environments improving, things like the display managers that we use on Linux. They've gotten really good now, and even things like NVIDIA support are actually getting pretty good on certain packages that we use on Linux. So in my conclusion, that's about it. Windows is just going to get more worse, honestly. I don't think it's ever going to get really much better, and you should try out Linux sometime. So if you did enjoy this video, I definitely would give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I know we're really close to 3.8k subs, which is amazing. I never thought I would reach 3.8k subscribers on a YouTube channel ever. Also, thank you to my supporters. Also a screenshot of them. I really want to thank you guys for, of course, paying a membership on my channel. If you guys want to become a membership, you definitely can. It's only like $1.40 Australian, I think I changed it to. So it is pretty low, but of course you don't have to. You can obviously just leave a like on the video, watch the video, whatever, comment down below the problems you've had in Windows in the past, and your opinion on Linux desktop as well, if you actually have tried Linux out. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.